Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live or tuning in a replay. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. This is episode 206, Family Bank and Trust. Definitely wanted to do this episode. Has been in high demand for quite some time now. A lot of people are in the process of going private, have established private positions, and so we're always looking from a family banking trust position. Everything in the private is pretty much family. It's dealing with families being in systems, families implementing systems that have processes and procedures of maintaining, growing, preserving, and passing on wealth to another generation, not forcing the next generation to be in a position where they are having to where they're having people to be in a position where you can work within the family. Loans are facilitated within the family. We can look at a classic family called the Rothschilds, where Hampshire sent his children from one location where they were to multiple regions throughout the world, sending your children through multiple regions and in turn instituting banking practices. And so we're going to see what are those family banking practices in this particular episode, facilitation, the thought process behind it, knowing that it's in trust, coming through the private, knowing that, okay, if it's through the private, then we have to establish the private position before we ever get into family banking trust, right? You have to be in that position first. It's where are you going to start the family banking trust if you're not in trust? See, this is the question we pose to the listeners that say, hey, let's hear what is the position, right? What is the position that you are operating in family banking trust? And clearly that is in trust. All banks are trust contracts. They're all contracts that were started by families or individuals that wanted to start the facilitation of what people call fractional reserve lending if they're participating in those environments. And so, whether you're going institutional route or you're going family, private family lending, private hard money lending, we see that across the board. Have seen that for successive generations. So you see generation to generation to generation continuously uh, preserving and passing along and growing from a family bank and trust position that is literally hard money lending to family members internally, lending to family members that are that may not necessarily be in that particular home or location, and in turn lending to the local community at large. Whether they have private contracts or people in the public that they are contracting as a private family bank and trust. So when we get into family banking trust, there can be a question of is it private? What is it not private? Traditionally, when you get into lending practices, they have fair lending practices acts. They have these things in the public side that are already regulated. So when people say, well, what are the guidelines? The guidelines are the regulations on the public side that deal with lending practices, that deal with banking practices. But when you deal with it in the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, clearly it's called private for a reason. And so when we deal with it from the private banking side conversation, the private banking side conversation looks like, well, first of all, you know the position, private banking, private trust contracts, and everyone knows that has moved into that position. So once you have that position established, we have the position of, so many people say, oh, you got to go out and get a trust. We don't know which trust to get. There's over 80 trusts. So when you come into trustee training, you're formalized in a system of private family banking trust. Why? It's formal. You get the four keys to wealth. What are the four keys to wealth? The four keys of the wealth are to protect it. So that means you're in family banking trust. You're in it. You're not trying to get in it. You're in it. You say, well, what's the difference? The difference is trying to obtain the position means there's a lack of it. The only position that is to be standing on is the fact that they're in private bank and trust contract. That's it. And so trustees know that. So when trustees that are moving in private banking trust, they say, oh, we're looking to jump and go to that next step of private banking trust. Okay, so you're going to the next step. What is the next step when you're in that position? After you protect it, you preserve it. Dealing with insurance. You're dealing with when everyone says, oh, they try to jump the protection part. People do jump protection and say, oh, well, we got to insure our family. Well, it's rather important to insure critical key men that are a part of the company. See, when you really come deeper into private trustee training, you learn that there are hundreds of insurance. You can have insurance on your dog. You can have insurance on body parts. There's insurance on so many different things. The first thing you and your family and your children learn is what real money is. Everybody glosses over real money because they didn't get a private education when they were growing up. But when you get the private education says gold and silver, precious metals, the five precious metals: gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and rhodium. They understand where real money, real wealth is stored. Real wealth is stored in collectible assets, things that never go to zero. Family Banking Trust operates from a position of they're not going to just go and get insurance, which is a paper contract. They also understand that they can utilize collateral such as hard assets, such as tangible assets, whether it be real property of homes or whether it be gold and silver, whether it be collectible art, whether it be diamonds or pearls, or whether it be collectible cars. All of these things are hard, tangible assets that can be issued a security or a contract as a collateral attachment against. And since we are in that position of knowing that, private banking trust, we might look at rings, the wedding band. If the wedding band has tangible value, speculatively per other people, because it's an asset that is speculated on these markets around the world given an arbitrary price. That's why it's very important to know how to arbitrage assets. These are financial terms that are encouraged for the family banking trust to be aware of. So the family banking trust says, okay, we're going to create an arbitrage on our wedding bands, which are assets which can be utilized as collateral inside a contract. So for everybody that came forth in the UCC, does the UCC hold the tangible asset? For all the UCC players, does the UCC hold the tangible asset, or does it report the tangible asset? Does the UCC report assets on a balance sheet or on a collateral financing debt statement? Yes. And these are things you can see in that realm. The UCC obviously has validity nowadays when we talk about, oh, well, the Moors came and said, oh, well, we're supposed to be in trust. When the Moors said, oh, we're supposed to be practicing private banking. But how are you practicing private banking? A, when you're not operating from a true private position in private trust contract. One. Where'd you get it from? Noble Drew Ali? Oh, where'd you get it from? Going in, working with the community? How can the community give you something your family didn't give you? If your family didn't give it to you, then you definitely have to have a private mentor. If a private mentor doesn't give it to you, then this next best alternative is a private group of people. These are a group of people. It's a community. You get attached to them, you get involved with it, and they're private. It's clearly stated that way. Private family banking trust. So you deal with them in that private capacity. You move forth now in the capacity of knowing we're protected. You move into preservation. Preservation is first A, knowing what real money is from paper money. You immediately, it's one, two, three. Contract, gold, silver, precious metals, collateralization, collateral possibly. Why? It allows us to now say, okay, we actually do have something tangible asset. A lot of times people that have acquired assets, they go get insurance on the individual that acquired those assets. They're a key individual, and they're asset and they're a liability to the company. If they fall off, there's a time period, there is a energy that is lost. Money is energy. If that person isn't producing for the company, they have to have time and money to reproduce that person, whether it's going out and recruiting someone, whether it's grooming someone, whether it is hiring someone else. These are the practices that are being practiced. Family banking trust. After insurance. Insurance is on Keyman. Oh, wow. That's where we are. Insurance. Ladies and gentlemen, when you deal with the type of players that we deal with in the private, there's a lot of flexibility in insurance policies. These policies are utilized as assets on people's books. When you look at some of the great entrepreneurs of all time, these people have utilized their insurance policies to take out loans against with formal banks and as well with the insurance companies that they actually have the contracts with. And in turn, by them having the contracts that they're with, the banks that they're with, or the insurance companies that they're with, they're able to create what people call now is called leverage. If you're not familiar with the term leverage, it can be very ambiguous, but at the end of the day, it's still a very important term in the fact of it deals with the terms that we deal with on private banking trust, which is OPM and other people and other people's money. And this is the age that we live in, especially in globalization. If you can admit that you live in globalization, you can see that there's a need for what's considered mass distribution. And that means that you can't do it all by yourself. So that's why you see the term single family office or you see multifamily office. Because is a family office now that has been established. There is a private family office that has been established. There is a private family banking office division that has been established within the family. People are bringing assets, having them possibly on the books. People say, well, what do UCC if that's public? What about the private? Does the trust report those things or who reports those things? Ladies and gentlemen, that's what private trustee training trains you in is to know the right position, own nothing, control everything through and through. No questions needed to ever be doubted about that position because you know that that's the superior position. Even public servants are what are they considered? Public servants. They are trustees of the public because they are in a position of servanthood, and that is the position of power and strength. Private family banking trust puts a family or you in a position where you can give to other family members and grow the family wealth. There are cultures that do not practice usury, which means practicing putting interest on a loan. So inside of private family banking trust, you have internal cultural distinctions that there are certain cultures that do not practice usury. It's called usury. That means that somebody is practicing putting interest on a loan. How can you pay back more than what you took? But these are uh, financial mechanisms that are in place in the world that private families practice. They practice usury. There are families that practice putting interest on loans, and then there are families that don't. So as you can see, there's different people in the private. It's not all people are evil because they have money or not. That's not the case. And so, encouraging and dealing with people from the private family banking trust position, you see that the first key is protection. Second key is preservation, and third key is growth. And that could be a form of usury. That could be a form of skill set. This is where you see a lot of families now diversify their skill set within their family. Or some of them, they just focus on growth in the same field that the previous generation was in. The previous generation may have been in banking, the family stayed in it. The previous generation may have been carpenters, they stayed in it. Growth does not mean that families have to disperse and go out and create more businesses or different businesses. Private family banking trust can mean that once again, the family can do exactly the entire process of growth. Protect, preserve, and literally start making loans and grow their entire family from a banking position, from the preservation position leading to the growth position, not just based off usury, but based off of becoming a private bank or banking position. Banking position growing into literally growing into a financial juggernaut. Why? Because now from the banking position you have excess amounts of capital. Excess amounts of capital are allowed to diversify. The reason we say so many people during this time. We're guessing in America the statistics are not what they're looking like. Right now in America, you see the statistics that there's unemployment at so-called all-time highs, Great Depression highs. But then for some odd reason, people are still walking around clean and not dusty. People may be living off credit cards. They may not be living off credit cards. Alrighty, everybody. One sec. So, private banking trust. This is a great episode, and we're actually going to pause here. So, we're going to do a major episode here, maybe possibly in between. So we're going to be working in between episodes. But this episode is really focused on private banking trust, which is dealing with you obviously are in trust as a trustee, and then in turn, people are moving into positions of utilizing the private system and then moving forward with having a system in place for their family to grow from a position of internal loans. They're grown. They don't need to go to the bank anymore now. They literally go to their policies. In turn, they're able to deal with alternative funding asset managers on the private side because they have those relationships because they're in the correct position. So uh, that's the most important part that we see is sometimes not looked at. And so this is a two-part episode. The first part is protection and preservation, and the second part will be growth and focused on what is the next one? Passing it along uh, unencumbered. And so we're going to bring on the growth segment with our trading partner Cornell. We actually just got him to come on to do an episode. So because once you're inside the system, what happens, ladies and gentlemen? When you get in the system, oh no, we got a system in place. Finally, you got a system that works. Did public school work? Let's look at Social Security. The system leaves people with $1,200, $1,400 a month. You ready to work your whole life to come out with $1,800 a month? You ready to work your whole life to come out with $2,200 a month? Try to see how $2,200 goes far in California. Try to see how far $2,200 goes in New York for rent, for a mortgage. $2,200. So when people want to talk about what it's going to provide, we'll see, ladies and gentlemen. The numbers speak for themselves. The statistics speak for themselves. So there is a system. The private system is one of those systems, whether it's entrepreneurship, investing in yourself, investing in other people. Private family banking trust. First step, protection. People say, do I have to have an asset to protect? You do. But if you don't have the system for true protection, how can you ever move forward from a defenseless position? So minimizing defenseless position is protection first and then preservation. You're still thinking long term. Even second step, preservation. Preservation comes from knowing that we have to get into what's considered real money, intangible assets that are not considered fiat or paper currency. Period. Do we utilize those things? How could you not? It's like asking you, do you utilize stocks? Do you utilize equities? Do you utilize commodities? Commodities are the precious metals, sugar, corn, investing in those areas, investing in water, investing in dirt, soil for the food that you eat. Oh, wow, I'm just going to go buy some land until a farmer wants to buy it from me and I'll lease it to him. You can do that in America. You can do that anywhere in the world over the internet. Buying land in jurisdictions. Hold hard tangible assets on the books like anything else. It's on the books. The books are what are being shown, not the hard tangible asset. When people traditionally invest in hard tangible assets, They're not buying the actual real thing. They're not. They're getting what's considered a contract now. Oh wow. So we never left the contract, the private sector? No, we didn't. It's just when you're dealing with people in the public that can potentially lose their money, they have public regulations to protect them from losing their money. That's why they have Federal Depository Insurance Corporation. They're protecting people's money from depositors at the bank. Because are you a depositor or an investor at the bank? Those are two different things. Those are two different things. So we're going to come back with not just being a depositor at a bank. Let's talk about it from being an investor at a bank now. Ooh, let's talk about it from the growth position now. Not from just protecting it, preserving it, but growing it. So we're going to actually, in this episode, come right back with an episode with Cornell the Trader and literally go from growth because so many people get in trust and say we have to run out, disperse capital into all these different businesses, but there's never a real internal skill development. Trading is a skill development. Doing hair is a skill development. Anything that is necessary now is a skill development. It's a necessary. And so trading allows families to generate massive amounts of wealth privately. Every successful, wealthy, private person traditionally, when we say every, we're talking about the major players are private VCs and hedge funds. They're angel investors. They're the people that literally funded the technology right now that people are utilizing in Silicon Valley. They're ex stock traders, ex lawyers, they're ex boomers ever since the last Great Depression. And we're going to tell you all how the stock market is literally about to ramp right back up, like the roaring 20s, the roaring 30s, the roaring 40s, and do another 100-year bull run. Because mankind is all about the bulls. It's just made us aware that there are things called bears. The bulls move forward, the bears take a reset. They hibernate. They sit for a second. They want to do they when your body catches a cold, it's a reset. So right now we're going through the Great Reset. We did an episode on the vault called the Great Reset. The what is it? The Industrial Revolution 4.0. The technology that we just talked about that's funded by the hedge funds and VCs, the baby trillionaires. The baby trillionaires. The wealth transfer has begun again. Where will your bloodline or your family be in the next 100 years? Will your family be in control of an area? We're going to talk about speaking and controlling your family's destiny from the grave. How do you do that? Contract. Family banking trust. We're going to talk about that. We're going to bring on a trust partner. Cornell, a trader partner. He's going to do a webinar actually this weekend. And so we want to go ahead and talk to him about the growth because the growth is so overlooked now because everyone wants to go to growth. Everyone's used to getting money. But what happened to the two previous stages? Protection and preservation. You can't skip the processes. We're going to come back and start the episode again with growth and passing it along unencumbered. Here we go. We'll hear from you all as soon as we get the episode back up and running. Peace and blessings. Christian at Trust Christian if you guys want to reach out.